The morning began like any other in the quiet suburban cul-de-sac. The lawns were freshly cut, the air smelled faintly of wet grass, and sprinklers ticked rhythmically in the distance. Daniel stepped outside with his loyal golden retriever, Max, who wagged his tail eagerly, and bounded toward the yard. But within minutes, the peace was shattered. The sound of sirens pierced the calm. 2 police cruisers turned sharply into the street, their flashing lights reflecting off the rows of identical mailboxes. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains and half-opened doors, murmuring in confusion. The officers stepped out, hands resting on their belts, and approached Daniel's house. The accusation, his dog Max, had been reported as dangerous and a threat to the neighborhood, and the person who made the call, none other than the HOA president, Karen, a woman infamous for her relentless complaints about everything from untrimmed hedges to the shade of someone's front door. What began as an ordinary morning walk would spiral into a battle of lies, truth, and justice. For Daniel, this was more than a nuisance. It was personal. Max wasn't just a dog. He had raised Max from a puppy after his wife passed away. The golden retriever had been his anchor, the one constant source of comfort during nights when grief felt unbearable. Losing Max would mean losing the last piece of peace Daniel still had. The HOA president, Karen, however, had always seemed to despise them. She scowled every time Max trotted past her perfectly manicured lawn. She accused Daniel of violating HOA bylaws over trivialities, like leaving his trash cans out for an hour too long. This time, she escalated. If her complaints stuck, animal control could take Max away permanently. Daniel knew what was at risk: the safety of his dog, who had never harmed anyone, his reputation as a responsible neighbor, the possibility of living under constant threat from a woman who thrived on intimidation, and emotionally, the stakes were crushing. Daniel couldn't bear the thought of Max being branded a danger, treated like a criminal when he was nothing but gentle. It wasn't just about rules. It was about loyalty, love, and standing against someone who abused power. Rehooked officers approached cautiously, expecting chaos, but instead of a snarling beast, they found Max sitting calmly on the porch, tail thumping against the wood, tongue lolling out with harmless joy. The officers exchanged confused glances. "Where's the threat?" one muttered. Karen stormed out of her house across the street, clutching a clipboard and wagging a finger like a weapon. "There," she shouted. "That dog is dangerous. He lunged at me yesterday, nearly ripped my arm off." But the officers saw none of that. They saw only a dog who leaned into Daniel's hand, seeking affection. The neighbors, curious now, began to gather, whispering as they filmed with their phones. The officers found no evidence of aggression. They told Karen they couldn't cite Daniel for anything, but she wasn't finished. Karen's voice rose, shrill and venomous. "Call animal control. That mutt bit a child. He's a menace to all of us." Gasps erupted among the watching neighbors. A child bitten? That was serious. But when pressed for details, Karen hesitated. She claimed it was a boy from another street but could not provide a name, address, or even proof of injury. The officers grew suspicious. Still, by protocol, they contacted animal control. Daniel's heart dropped. He knew once animal control got involved, things could get out of hand fast. When the animal control truck pulled up, the neighborhood felt like a stage set for confrontation. The officers from the unit were calm but firm. They began checking Max, observing his behavior, asking for veterinary records and vaccination proof. Daniel complied with everything, pulling out paperwork and calmly explaining Max's history of perfect health and training. The supposed bite victim never appeared. Not a single parent came forward. The story was crumbling. As Karen's lies began to wobble, the neighbors grew bold. Several spoke up, saying they had never once seen Max act aggressively. One woman even showed a video from the day before of Max playing fetch with children on the street. The gentle retriever wagged his tail as the kids laughed and hugged him. Karen's face twisted with fury. She accused Daniel of bribing neighbors to defend him. She screamed that Max was a ticking time bomb, but then came the knockout blow. The animal control officers quietly revealed something shocking. This wasn't Karen's first complaint. She had filed more than 6 false reports against other neighbors in the past 2 years. Complaints about illegal cats, feral rabbits, even a threatening turtle that turned out to be a child's pet in a backyard pond. The pattern was clear. Karen wasn't protecting the community. She was waging personal vendettas. The tension reached its breaking point when animal control officers turned on Karen. Her voice cracked as she tried to defend herself, but the officers cut her off. "Ma'am, filing false reports is a violation of state law. This isn't just an HOA issue anymore. You've wasted law enforcement resources, endangered innocent animals, and harassed your neighbors." Karen went pale. The neighbors, once silent victims of her bullying, now stood in open defiance, phones recording every second. The officers issued her a hefty fine on the spot for filing fraudulent reports. They documented the incident, added it to her record, and promised further review for possible charges. Then, the final blow came not from the police, but from her own HOA board. Word spread quickly, and within days, an emergency meeting was held. Embarrassed by Karen's actions, the board voted to strip her of her title as president. The woman who had wielded authority like a sword was dethroned in front of everyone she once intimidated. Daniel, standing quietly with Max by his side, felt the weight lift. He hadn't needed to fight with anger. The truth had fought for him. The neighborhood returned to its quiet rhythm. Sprinklers hissed again, children rode bicycles down the street, and Max resumed his joyful patrols of the yard, tail wagging with unshaken loyalty. Karen, however, became the talk of the block. Once feared, she was now ridiculed. Her power evaporated. She could no longer threaten, fine, or harass. She lived under the same rules she had twisted against others. Daniel's bond with Max grew stronger. Every wag of the golden retriever's tail reminded him that justice had prevailed. He reflected on the absurdity of people who misuse power, who try to destroy others out of spite. In the end, truth stood firm, lies collapsed, and the moral echoed clearly. Those who weaponize authority will always face the consequences of their own actions. The story of Karen and the cops was retold across the neighborhood, not as a tale of fear, but as a lesson in resilience and courage. Daniel didn't just keep his dog, he kept his dignity. And Karen, who once thought she could control everything, learned that when you cry wolf too many times, the wolf never shows up but justice does.